This episode is sponsored by Lube Marine, your global partner for pioneering lubrication solutions.
1, 2, 3, 4.
This is Green Seas, the podcast by TradeWinds about the environment and the business of the ocean. I'm Eric Priante Martin, and today we're going to hear my conversation on the stage with a panel of experts on whether shipping is ready for the ups and downs of the European Union's carbon market now that the industry will have to pay for the right to pollute. Here's our panel discussion during the TradeWinds Shipowners Forum during Norshipping in Lillestrøm, Norway.
So what we're going to be talking about today is the emissions trading system that now will include, starting in 2024, will include shipping in it. That's been done, but certainty begets uncertainties, new uncertainties, that is. Or at least that's what we like to think, because uncertainties sell newspapers. Shipping, as shipping enters the EU ETS, that means in a very simplistic way that there will be a tax on carbon. But because it's a cap and trade system, because it's a carbon market, it's not exactly straightforward. And so I prepared, here we are, I prepared this quick slide just to kind of explain it a little bit. I know most folks in the room are very aware of this development, but it starts in January 2024. It starts at 40% of emissions for European voyages, and then that phases into 100% by 2026. But if it's a voyage that goes outside of the European Union, it's going to be 50% of that. The allowances have to cover CO2, methane, nitrous oxide, laughing gas, and it's at first it's going to be ships for 5,000 gross tons and above. There's a little typo on that one. We don't do that in TradeWinds, but I accidentally got one in here. This is an important one for the discussions I've been hearing at Norshipping this week. Is the EU is going to be looking in 2028 to see what the IMO has done and how they're going to react to any IMO market-based measure. So, and then just one more slide. I just wanted to because we're talking about a carbon market, just to look at this, the price dynamics that are happening here. Basically what we see in this slide is we see volatility, but we also see generally kind of an upward curve. And I think that's an important thing to talk about, because the EU isn't creating new allowances for shipping. It's adding shipping to an existing system where the carbon allowances are actually going to decrease over time. So let's start having our discussion. So I wanted to start by going first to Frederic Bouthillier. There he is. And because Frederic is he's the head of shipping at Vertis Environmental Finance. Frederic, your job is to advise shipping companies on how to comply with the emissions trading system. And so let's pretend that you're at a shipping event and the moderator is giving you is asking you to give just one piece of advice. What would that one piece of advice be to shipping companies that are getting prepared for EU ETS?
Thanks, Eric. I think the piece of advice that I would certainly give is to get ready as soon as possible, because getting ready to trade for a shipping company doesn't mean that you have to trade, but at least you have the opportunity. You were showing earlier on this graph, obviously, where you can really see the volatility, and obviously, for example, we saw the price going from 100 to 55 when Russia invaded Ukraine. Should you have been ready to trade at that time, you could have started, piling up your EUAs at a very competitive price. So that's, I think, something to keep in mind, getting ready as soon as possible.
So next, I wanted to turn to Andrea Olivi. He's the head of wet freight at Trafigura, and one of the things that ship owners were happy with in the emissions trading system was that it was set up with a polluter pays principle, where the commercial operators are basically footing the bill. And I wanted to ask you kind of, what does that mean for a company like yours? How are you preparing for the ramifications of that? And how does it change the way how does it affect the way you charter ships?
Well, I would start by saying that we really like EU ETS. We like it because we finally do what we should have done since a few years, which is put a price on carbon. By putting a price on carbon, we are then finally able to take the right commercial decisions while factoring in environmental aspects. Yeah? What we're doing at the moment is we're obviously focusing on fixing modern vessels. We're fixing vessels with a lower consumption. We're investing in retrofitting energy-saving devices on our vessels. Sometimes we collaborate and partner with owners whose vessels we have on long-term TC, and we split, let's say, the bill and share the upside on the consumption savings that we achieve. And this is what we need, and we need to do it more and more. And I think this is the great thing about the EU ETS. It finally puts a price on carbon, and it allows us to take these decisions together with the ship owners.
And next, I wanted to turn to Engebret Dahm. He's the chief executive of Klaveness Combination Carriers. Engebret, you're the ship owner on our panel, but your company is a bit different, right? So because you have combination carriers, so to put it very simplistically, they can carry different types of cargo, so they can minimize kind of journeys, voyages where those vessels are empty. But tell us about sort of the ramifications of ETS for you as a ship owner, and how are you looking to how do you plan to navigate a world with ETS?
First, start agreeing with Andrea that it's so important we finally get the price on carbon, so we as a ship owner and the whole community gets the incentives to do something, changing the way the business is run. We have, as you said, this natural advantage as we have that our ships are ballasting far less than standard ships, meaning that we have a far lower carbon emission per ton transported than our competitors. But what we do, our main preparation for EU ETS is to make our business even more efficient, meaning that we have a big energy efficiency program. We're investing probably close to $60 million in our existing and new builds for energy efficiency business. And also we see that there are ways to improve the operational efficiency, getting the crew to use the equipment to put on board, better follow-up, better training, and also putting in a shadow carbon price into our daily chartering operations for regions that doesn't have.
Yeah.
So I think we do a lot throughout our business to ensure that we are as efficient as possible, and then hence less exposure to EU ETS rules, and hopefully also getting a benefit.
Now I want to go back to this slide really quick. And as I introduce Antonello Zanfardino, he's the senior carbon analyst at shipbroker BRS. And I wanted to ask you, how you think shipping should prepare for these pricing dynamics. Like, how do you navigate the volatility? How do you navigate whatever you think is the outlook for what that price is going to be?
Sure. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Indeed, shipping is now joining the rest of the world, as I heard yesterday at the conference on the ocean just here. And you are joining the ETS system in a moment where prices are sky high, but also when volatility is extremely, extremely high. So take advantage. My first message would be take advantage of this, be prepared, as Frederic said, but don't just think that it's a one-way direction. Prices are of course increasing, but there are also opportunities for you to catch the lows. So be prepared as soon as possible to trade, but also be sensible and be smart. Look, there are companies like us, like BRS, that follow the market for you. We provide a lot of information and market updates for you. Take advantage of that. The market is volatile, and be sensible, be prepared. Catch the lows, and use the system not as a tax and a punishment, but more as a tool, as an advantage for you to be more competitive compared to a simple carbon tax that maybe other countries at some point will implement on shipping.
So next, I wanted to turn to Sofia Furstenberg Stott. She is a partner at Furstenberg Maritime Advisory, and I wanted to turn to you last at the start because I wanted to broaden the scope a little bit, and because EU ETS doesn't exist in a vacuum. There's also the Fuel EU maritime legislation. In July, the IMO has an important decision to make, and there's a lot of other moving parts at the IMO that will continue beyond then. How do we put the impact of ETS in the context of those other pieces of the puzzle?
Thank you for that question. I think when we spoke before, we touched upon the challenge we currently have with regards to applying a life cycle approach, counting the carbon from cradle to grave. And I certainly hope at the IMO in July that we have a well-to-wake policy agreement. I know, working with the fuel producers, that there are hundreds of ways of fuel pathways with different carbon footprints. And so the ETS there is an absolute necessity that how we account and pay for carbon allowances in the ETS is directly aligned with how we account for carbon emissions at the IMO. And so if we don't have that alignment, we are creating further ambiguity, and it will be further complex to take long-term strategic decisions as to what to do with your ships. And not only that, but fuel producers who see that maritime might be a very important catalyst for the wider energy transition. Maritime has the size of demand that is necessary to de-risk these fuel investments. If that ambiguity is there and they cannot sell their fuel at that carbon content, they will not invest in green ammonia. They will not invest in low carbon methanol, because then they can sell grey ammonia.
So the IMO, to put it in a very kind of simple terms, is looking at whether to calculate well to wake or tank to wake, but that's very simple terms. There's many more parts of that. What might the misalignment that you described look like?
So the fuel industry is now trying to develop a harmonized certification across all industry sectors, not just as shipping. As we all know, ammonia is primarily used as a fertilizer. The agriculture industry is certainly also in need of decarbonisation. And they are trying to establish a well-to-gate certification. They are trying to understand what is our footprint and how can we sell it to maritime. And if the maritime industry is not able to acknowledge what that well-to-gate actually contains, we're simply not going to get alternative fuels to scale fast enough. I'm not sure if that is answering your question.
Absolutely. So Andrea, I heard you say that you like ETS, but is there anything, I've also read recently in TradeWinds your criticism of the carbon intensity indicator, and I'm wondering, is there Is there anything that you don't like about ETS, or any concerns about it?
I think the challenge with ETS is it's a regional measure trying to tackle a global issue. Yeah, but I am hopeful, and if you look at what happened with the sulfur cap, the EU first introduced it, and then the IMO followed. I think the same will happen with carbon price. So the EU has introduced EU ETS. I hope and I believe that the IMO will, over the next 3, 4, 5 years, introduce a global carbon price. Exactly. And this would be absolutely great. And obviously, the IMO has a lot to do. We're all very hopeful that at the next meeting, they will introduce the global fuel standards. We hope that we will move to a full life cycle emission calculating factor. We hope we become more ambitious and achieve net zero by 2050. I think that's what we really need to focus on. So yes, it's a lot of work, but it's a great opportunity for the industry to do the right thing.
Engebret, I saw you agree with that comment on the carbon price. Is there a specific carbon price, or would any carbon price do? Is there a certain level relative to ETS that it would need to be?
Of course, today, I think the latest EUA price is 77 euros, and if you even at the top of the implementation in 2026, it corresponds to $120 per ton of fuel. You add up. And of course, that's far below what's necessary to decarbonize this industry. You should at least have a carbon price being 3-4 times higher in order to get the things happening. But of course, the expectation something is coming could drive change. So, but of course, as Andrea was saying, we need this on a global basis as well. And that's the real important thing. But hopefully, EU ETS can drive IMO to do the right things. And that's our hope and what we pray for every day.
So, Antonello, we heard we're at, what did we say, 70, above 70
80,
now,
let's
78
say.
now, okay. So what, at that price and at the price that, the ETS price might be, say in 2025, how do you expect it to influence the way ships trade? What's the impact going to be on shipping?
Well, it's definitely a significant additional burden and additional cost, the one of the CTS. Even right now at 80 euro, although not enough to fully decarbonize or to promote zero emission technology, you can already think that with current prices for a vessel that sails in between two European ports, the CO2 cost will add an extra 20% above the fuel cost in 2024, up to probably 40% in 2026 when the ETS will be fully on ships. So it's a significant cost already now. Of course, from here to 2025 or 2026, the ETS price is probably going to be even higher, and we might see some shifts in the way how ships trade in between European ports and the ships used somewhere else. We have seen earlier on at the presentation of ROAR that there is the West and the rest of the world. I can imagine something similar with maybe some more efficient ships being close to Europe and staying in between European waters, because the most efficient ships will take more advantage of the fact that they have to pay a CO2 cost on top of the fuel, while the least efficient one being kicked out of Europe. On top of that, I would say there is also a significant distinction that has to be made in terms of how ships on the subsectors of the shipping industry, let's say. And here I would like to point out that the important point is how predictable and how easy it is for you to predict which ports are you calling and which voyages are you doing during the year, to be able to forecast at best what will be your CO2 cost for your voyages, and be able to pass this cost either to the final customers or to include this cost into the freight. For example, I like examples, so let's take a very basic one. It's way easier to predict a ferry going every week and doing the same schedule every week, so you know where it starts, you know where it ends. It's very easy to predict those kind of emissions. It will be much harder to predict emissions for ships that are trading on the market on tram trade, so just shipping going around, chasing opportunities, looking for cargoes, and moving around the globe, not because of a fixed schedule, but just because of the market realities. So I would say that would be also a very important point to keep in mind.
I'd like to remind the audience here that I'm checking for questions that you might have in the app here, and also there's my colleague in the room. If you've got questions that you'd like to ask in person, can help you out with a microphone, because I'm not seeing any questions here yet, so I'm not 100% sure it's working. So you might have to ask in person. I wanted to jump to Frederic with a question. So one of the uncertainties, as it's been described to me with the emissions trading system, is that the way that shipping's introduction into it has been implemented, leaves certain parts of that implementation up to the various member states of the EU. Is there reason for worry about that? And what are the ramifications of it?
I think there are no big worries, I would say, because pretty much we have the global frame. It's there. So it's a matter of, I think what is more important for an owner is to understand, because it's a financial market, EU is a regulated financial product, so it's to understand how the market is moving, what is driving this market. And obviously, I think once, again, starting from really the basics, identifying who is going to be responsible, i.e. the owner or the dock entity holder. Obviously identify what is the relevant register for the entity, and then starting to trade and to planify things, establish your compliance strategy, as we say. And again, on the strategy side, I would say there are obviously at least 3 levels that are not alternative, but rather cumulative. It's on the volume, based on your MRV from the previous year, based on the pricing. It's a volatile market, so you try to optimize your entry point based on trading tools. And last but not least, I think it's the timing at which you're going to buy the EUAs, which is going to be triggered by the strategy of the cost pass-through to the charters. Again, we are already now starting to trade with cruise. Why? Because they are already selling their tickets for 24 cruise in the world. And obviously, if they want to pass the cost on their ticketing system, they need to include the price. And then you have 2 solutions. Either you don't move, but from day 2 you're generating a financial exposure, or you move and you buy at the same time that you pass the cost on to the charters or to the passengers. Same for the ferries. So I think it's really very, I'm not saying simple, but it's not too complicated to establish a proper compliance strategy. Again, mapping everything, holistical view. Where the market is going is obviously a bit different topic, and clearly the EU is putting 68.4 million EUAs, additional EUAs on the market to cover the arrival of the shipping, whereby the first year is 40% on 90 million, so give and take 36 million, so you could say, oh, the market is long. But I mean, you can't look at the ETS market without having this holistical view, taking into consideration the industry, the aviation. We at Vertis, we are trading EUAs for the last 20 years with industry and aviation, and clearly we see that we can't really just look at shipping when it comes to ETS. You really have to have the holistical view, what the industry is doing, what the aviation is doing.
One of the things about shipping's introduction to ETS is that obviously a lot of the industries that are already in the ETS sort of are driving the pricing dynamics, and I wonder, so how does shipping companies kind of ride that? How do they navigate that? And is it through buying carbon allowances as you go? Is it futures market? Is it some other form of hedging? Antonello, any thoughts on what you think might happen?
Everything is possible. You have three markets. You have the spot, you have the futures, you have the options. Everything is workable, and there is not a single solution. I mean, every and each ship owner is different, depending on your operation. If you're on the spot, if you do voyage, or if you are more on the time charter, the trading system and the system that you will use to buy and the timing to buy your EUAs will be obviously completely different. And that's, I think, that's where we have to be pragmatic and really always tailor-made solution for your customers.
Antonello.
Yeah, sure. No, I agree with Frederic, but again, my key point here will be again predictability. How predictable your market is, and how predictable are the voyages you are going to make to first take the buying decision, and then second, take advantage of the volatile markets. Since the beginning of the year, the allowances prices have moved by 25 euros. So between, let's say, a 75-ish to 100, more than 100 euro this year. It's a huge difference between you buy now at 70, almost 80, 70, 75, rather than buying them at 100. So it's a volatile market. The messages follow it. We follow it closely. You can, of course, buy them spot, derivatives, and auctions. Although auction is not, I would say, a recommended option for at least for medium-sized ship owners. I don't really see the advantage of going through the complex burden and requirements just to get access to auctions, while you can be on the spot market and get almost the same price. So it wouldn't be for me an option. I would explore it that much.
Andrea, can I put that one to you? How, as a trader, and on your freight desk, what's the mechanics of how you're going to kind of navigate the carbon markets?
So I think we're lucky because we have a carbon desk since several years. We have been trading EU ETS for quite some time in relation to our NISTAR facilities. So we have specialized, we have people that know the market and that are advising us, and tomorrow will advise, I'm sure, third-party ship owners as well on what to do and how to do things. I've been speaking to a lot of ship owners over the last couple of months about EU ETS, and I must say the majority of them are more worried about complying than, let's say, speculate or find the right entry point. And they all do believe that they will be able to eventually pass this cost to charters, which I think will happen. So from that point of view, I think the big issue right now around EU ETS is the admin burden. And it takes a long time to set up an account. Owners should start today. You don't want to be an owner on the 15th of December saying, we need to register. There's going to be a problem if you wait until then. So I think that's probably the most important thing, I would say.
Sorry.
No, and I think, we as a shipping book, we will gear ourselves up to offer EU ETS inclusive freight to charters if this is something that they want. So we will offer whatever service our customer needs.
Engebret, how do you intend to kind of navigate that with you and your customers? And do you, as a ship owner, are you concerned about that administrative burden that Andrea mentioned?
I think we can handle the administrative burden. We have the scale to do that. I think, it is, in principle, it sounds very easy. You can pass on the cost to the charterers, like Andrea, if that happens. But of course, the devil is in the detail, because, it's, if you have for instance, tanker business, you don't know actually where the ship is heading. They could be rerouted. They could have a longer waiting time. So a lot of, to calculate actually and put into freight what actually the EUA exposure will be, is a bit more complicated. And then also you have the time difference, the fact that you are reporting in March the subsequent year, and then you are actually releasing the EUAs in September. So it is some complexity in total. So what we do, of course, we ensure that our contracts are taking care of that, we can pass on to our charterers. Secondly, we have also put up, on the process of putting up a trading desk for EUAs, and not in KCC, but in Klaveness as a totality, in order to optimize things and possibly take some benefits. But I think so it's more complex than the first thinking it would be, and I think ship owners should really look into it and take care and have some strategy on it.
And if I may add also, okay, they are set up, they are a big company, they know what they're doing, but you have a lot of smaller entities, maybe, a small company owning 1 or 2 ships. It's going to be very difficult for those companies, and I think we will see probably pools gain an advantage here because they will be able to aggregate, let's say, vessels and offer these services to smaller third-party owners. So that's something that we may start seeing happening in the next couple of months.
Sofia, one of the details on my first slide up there is the 5000 GT, and it's something that you mentioned to me when we spoke earlier, some of the ramifications, and I guess I wonder, do you worry that a ship that's 4,909 GT is gonna have an advantage over one that's just a little bit bigger? What are the ramifications of that size limit?
Yeah, so we have lately been working with some chemical tankers in Europe, and surprisingly, there is 5,000 is a very important kind of marker here. There is a significant amount of vessels that are just under that size, and more specifically, even that. And if we are in the tanker market specifically, we have the double hull regulation, and actually one important consequence right now is that. So you have the actual deadweight tonnage, and then you have the reduced gross tonnage, and then you have the reduced gross tonnage. And if that is just above the 5,000, you're actually going to be penalized. So it's like this incredible situation in that specific kind of branch, and fleets that have a portion kind of below 5,000 and some above. It's creating a rather interesting situation in that particular case. I was no, sorry. Back to your question again. What were you?
No, I have another one for you actually,
Yeah.
which is and I'd like to if you look at the price in ETS,
Yeah.
right? So there's been a lot of discussion over the course of these few days at North Shipping about a carbon price that encourages green fuels, or that cuts the price gap between green fuels and conventional fuels.
Yeah.
So with the EU ETS price, is there going to be any promotion of green fuels at the price levels of EU ETS, or is this just an efficiency game?
When you first asked that question to me, I was like, no, I don't think so. And then I came back to you and I said, yes, I think so. And the reason for that are several. And one of them is that I have so far not got any kind of calculation, like case, to compare it with. And recently, Watson Farley and Williams and DNV, they they talked about a case where they looked at 12 vessels, 100% operation in the EU, 100% implementation. The example they call heavy cargo, heavy carriers or something like that. And at $80 per carbon allowance, they came up with an annual cost of €5 million. And so suddenly we have, with this, even though I appreciate the great volatility and uncertainty in that case, but suddenly we have an actual cost, a very big cost, that we can go to our customers, our charterers with, and say, do you think we should work together to see how we can build better vessels going forward? How can we, this is a cost that I expect to transfer over to you. Are you interested in working with us to get a new building scheme that is more progressive, aggressive, and whatever, and starting taking those kinds of chances. So, it requires, however, that you are both interested to not only, save cost here. Why are we all doing this? Why is the ETS here? Well, at the end of the day, it's actually trying to combat climate change. And I'm sorry to burst the bubble, but energy efficiency, which we all agree is absolutely necessary right now to kind of get down, but energy efficiency is not going to reach zero. The ETS is not going to help us reach zero. But that cost, if we work strategically and collaboratively with our customers, we can, if we both believe that we want to combat climate change, there should be the right incentive to reach those collaborations through the ETS.
Andrea, I know Trafigura has looked a lot at green fuels. Do you ever see ETS, the price level of ETS, doing more than encouraging more vessel efficiency?
Absolutely, and I think the longer we go, the more it will help, and then after that you'll also have the Fuel EU Maritime, which will help cost neutralize the difference between VLSFO and other green fuels. So I think it's help. It's not going to solve the issue, but it's a good start, let's say. And when you factor in EU ETS, Fuel EU Maritime, IRA, which is making blue ammonia more and more competitive, well, then suddenly maybe in 2027, 2028, all the stars will align, and finally we will solve the big issue because the owners will have the confidence to go and order green ships. Fuel producer will have the confidence to say, okay, I will invest in this green ammonia or green methanol project because I know I can sell the fuel to the owners, and suddenly we can finally decarbonize this industry. So I do think it will work.
Engebret, what do you think?
I think, I agree it helps, but what we need is some sort of predictability outlook for the global regulations, and that's what we are missing today. There are basically close to nothing.
Yeah.
And what's already implemented, like the CI, is, to put it frankly, quite stupid. So now IMO have to get a regulation, now starting up at the meeting in July, where we firstly establish that there will be a global carbon tax and have some sort of time frame for when the details will be settled, and so we have some predictability, so we can, both we as ship owners, fuel producers, can start investing for reaching the targets of decarbonizing the business.
You mentioned CII, quite stupid. If I can be a bit less diplomatic, I'd say it's just stupid, without the quiet.
Thank you.
Frederic, I want to go to you with a question. We heard earlier how the burden that ETS will put on the smaller ship owners. And this is a very fragmented industry. There's lots of small ship owners. How do you think that's going to play out? And what are the smaller ship owners going to be doing differently?
I think they're going to obviously face proportionally a bigger burden than the larger companies. I think then really what they have to concentrate is to fine-tune really the passing over the cost to the charters and to avoid generating any financial exposure. That being said, I mean it's for small owner, they will have nevertheless to be ready, because we were mentioning obviously passing the cost to the charters, but if you have a vessel that is on time charter due to be delivered APS, and that the vessel is sailing from Europe, that leg will be basically under the EU ETS scope, but the charters will not pay for that. Same, we all went through the BIMCO ETS clause. If the vessel is on fire, during that time, the ETS exposure is for the ship owner. So clearly, the small ones will have to get really, fine-tuned and well organized to make sure that there are no cornerstones that are, not covered, and to make sure that the name of the game for them is going to be, being financially neutral. That's it.
Well, our time has elapsed, and so I want to thank everyone on this panel for an excellent discussion, and thanks to the audience for tuning in. And now it's time for some coffee. So I know I need some. Thanks, everyone.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Here's more on the environment and the business of the ocean. Danish energy company Ørsted, a leader in producing wind energy at sea, is trimming its ambitions in the space. Recharge reported that the company now plans to have 28 gigawatts of offshore wind capacity by 2030, down from a previous target of 30 gigawatts. Why? Ørsted is taking a harder look at projects to stay profitable. Read about it at rechargenews.com. Gary Dixon reported in TradeWinds that Norwegian shipowner Wilson has ordered at least 6 and up to 14 bulk carriers with an array of energy efficiency features. Designs of the small ships show a pair of EconoWind sails on each vessel, and they'll have other features, including an optimized hull design. And the design allows Wilson to adapt the vessels to various alternative fuels as they become more viable. Gary also reported that 2 major ship owners, Mitsui OSK Lines and Hafnia, are among investors in a new clean fuel production project in the U.S. The companies have invested in Ascension Clean Energy, which will produce hydrogen and green ammonia in Louisiana. Read this story and more at TradeWindsNews.com. Music for this episode is by Music Unlimited from Pixabay.